Okay, Boker Tov. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back for this week's edition of Insights into the weekly Parsha. This week we start a new Sefer Vayikra and Parshas Vayikra. For those of you who'd like to follow along with us and our Parsha learning this morning, can be found in the Art Scroll Bluestone Chumash on page 544, page 545 in the English. Sefer Vayikra, Parshas Vayikra. Our learning this morning is generously sponsored by our very dear friends Jeffrey and Carla Klein. Thank you so much for your generosity sponsoring this learning in commemoration of the art site of Jeffrey's beloved father, Eugene Klein. His neshama should have an aliyah, the schus, and the merit of us learning Torah together. It should be a merit of schus for your entire family. Thank you so much for your generosity, and let's get going. Parshas Vayikra, Sefer Vayikra begins famously, Vayikra el Moshe Vayidaber Hashem Elav Me'ohel Moed Lemor, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu calls out to Moshe Rabbeinu and he speaks to him from the Ohel Moed, and he says to him, Daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta lehem Adam ki yakriv mikem karban l'Hashem min habehema min habakar min hatzon takriva es karban chem. You should speak to the Jewish people, you should speak to the Israelites, you should say to them, when any of you will present some karban, some offering of cattle to Hashem, you should choose his offering from the herd or from the flock. Very specific details as we're going to learn what are the particulars, what are the nuances. Now, before we get into the nuts and bolts here, and what is the secret of our success, what is it that we can lean on, what is it that we can grow from? So let's begin with first what is the well-known Rashi. Vayikra el Moshe, we know that the small letter Aleph, the symbol of Aleph, the Echad HaMiyuchad, why is this letter Aleph small? So Rashi famously tells us Hakol Holech, that the voice, the sound of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Holech, it emanated, it reverberated, Umagia la'oznav v'chol yisov v'lashomin, that it went into the ears of everybody in Klal Yisrael. It's not just that Moshe Rabbeinu heard it, it's that everybody had the possibility and the potential to hear it, v'lo but they did not hear it. Meaning that there's a level of which a person has to be attuned to it, the sounds of the Ribbono Shel Olam, being tuned in, making sure that the frequency that you are living with is aligned, adjusted, is not manufactured, but rather is truly connected to the voice of, the way of, the values of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that the sound, the kol, the voice was Holech Umagia la'oznav Chol Yisrael. Everybody had a chance to hear it, lo shomin, but it's that they did not let it in. Moshe Rabbeinu let it in. Moshe Rabbeinu, as the perennial leader, the manig of the Jewish people, his frequency was completely and utterly unadulterated, unwaveringly committed and connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore Vayikra al Moshe, it's Hashem who taps into that frequency, hears the sound of the Almighty's voice, and has it emanate and penetrate his heart into his soul. But we understand that the thrust of Sefer Vayikra and Parshas Vayikra, it speaks about the procedure for offering karbanos. It's interesting that many of us are aware of the fact that many children, when they're starting, introduced to for the very first time, the limud of Chumash, learning Bible, they learn in Sefer Vayikra, the book of Leviticus, the concept of karbanos, the offering of sacrifices, which for many of us is a very difficult topic. The reason why many children begin with the study of karbanos is the concept of karev and kiruv and closeness and drawing closeness. It doesn't have to be, as many in the vernacular tend to assume, that kiruv means that those who are karev and kiruv rechokim, those are far, bringing them close. But it's even the concept of kiruv karovim, that even those who are close should be brought closer. The concept of kiruv and karov and karban, of sacrifice, what it means to bring oneself close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through the process that the Torah outlines. We're going to focus on a little bit of that in our learning here this morning. And so we understand in Perek Aleph, Pasuk Gimel, in describing a person who brings a karban, brings a sacrifice to the Mikdash, to the temple, to the Mishkan in this case, but ultimately in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Torah uses an interesting word, a set of words to describe who this person is. Pasuk tells us, Perek Aleph, Pasuk Gimel, Im oile karbono min habakar zocher tamim. If it is that his carbon, his sacrifice is an oila, is a burnt offering, and it is from a bakar, it is from cattle, so it should be zocher tamim, it should be unblemished. Ishiakrivenu, he should bring it in this manner. El Pesach al Moed, where does he bring it? He brings it to the entrance of the Ohel Moed. And here are the two words which are fascinating. Yakriv oso. So it is that he should bring it. he should bring it Yaakov also, he shall offer it. Now it seems pretty obvious. Who should offer it if he's not offering it? Maybe somebody will be his ambassador, somebody will be his shaliach. But here's how the pasuk ends. So it's Yaakov also, he should willingly bring it, that he should lirtzono lifnei Hashem. He should not just that he should bring it, but he should bring it lirtzono. Lirtzono means willingly. He should bring this carbon, he should bring this offering to the Ohel Moed, to the entrance of the tent of meeting, and it should be lirtzono, it should be willingly lifnei Hashem, to God. Now what's interesting about these words, Rashi explains Yaakov also to tell us something that's a famous Rashi in Chumash. What does it mean, Yaakov also? Isn't it obvious that he's going to bring it? So Rashi is being Malamed, teaching us something which is essential. Malamed shekoifen oiso. You know what it means? This principle, this clause, it teaches us that a person is actually coerced to bring the offering. If, let's just say, he is remiss in bringing the carbon he had promised. He says he's going to do something. We know that how terrible it is if a person promises with their mouth. They say they're going to do something. They offer that they're going to pledge something, and they're going to make a nadava to any type of institution or do something, maisa, a deed, or they promise that they're going to bring a carbon. In this case, they're going to bring an offering to atone for their want behavior. So what happens if a person doesn't? So the pasuk tells us, Yaakov, so Rashi explains what that means. It's kofano, so it means that we can force him to do that. Now, what does that mean? Yochel bal karcho. Does that mean that they should force him against his will? That he should be brought to do it even if he's not really interested in doing it? Well, like, what does that mean? Talmud Loimer Lirtzono. There's a connection between the words Yaakov Oso and Lirtzono, that he brings it and that it will be willingly. So how does that reconcile? How does that work? Loimer, that means, so HaKetzad. So this, Rashi explains, what this means is they can have two what seems to be very diametrically opposed concepts. He has to be forced to do it because he doesn't want to do it, and then it will be that he will willingly do it. What is this? How do we understand this? So HaKetzad kofen oso ad sheyomer roitza ani. Famous Rashi. Rashi tells us, how do we reconcile this? How do we get it so that he's going to bring this offer willingly? So the explanation, Rashi says, quoting the Gemara Masechus Rosh Hashanah, is the explanation is they coerce him until he says that I'm willing. Now, does it mean that he says I'm willing because now what's he going to do? He's getting beaten up, or he's being cajoled, or he's being, very strongly spoken to, and therefore he says, right, Sonny, I want to do it. All right, so I'll do it. I give up. Genug shine, finished. So now that I say right, Sonny, it means I'm going to do it. So it means he didn't want to do it, and now he's going to do it because right, Sonny. Now, when you think about what this means, that means that he's going to bring it even against his will, so it seems. He's required to bring this sacrifice. If he refuses, the manhigim, the leaders, they force him to bring this carbon. Now, what this, to reconcile this idea is that ultimately he's going to decide this person is subjected to this coercive measure until he actually decides to bring it willingly. Now, does that mean that it changes what he wants to do in his heart? What happens if you convince somebody, you spend so much time trying to tell somebody about the merit of doing X, Y, or Z, and then they decide, even though they initially and originally didn't want to do that, now they want to do it. So now, does that mean that changed what they feel in their heart, or does it just mean that they're compliant? It just means that they're now willing to do what you've wanted them to do. They don't necessarily want to do it. We have this many times in Shmiras HaMitzvos, and we have this concept in Chazal which tell us Shemitech lo lishma bo lishma, which means even if it is that a person doesn't really understand it, or doesn't really have the hislavus, the energy, the enthusiasm, the excitement, the understanding of what it is that you have to do, even if it's for the ulterior, for the wrong motives, for the wrong reasons, even if it's not for the right reasons, the genuine, authentic, truest reasons, it will be bolishma. You'll come to do it, and you'll see that over time, you'll come to appreciate what it is. You'll come to understand the value of it. You'll want to do it willingly, and you'll come to do it with a certain sense of zeal and purpose. Now, the Ibn Ezra in this pasuk, which means this word ritzono is a significant word. Significantly, does it describe ritzono? Means it's willingly. It has to be that he's not necessarily just offering it because, okay, you've worn me down. That's it. You tired me out. That's it. What else is to do? He has to offer this carbon voluntarily. It can't just be that, okay, it's coerced. It started in the sense that I'm coercing you. I'm doing whatever I can to convince you, but not out of obligation. It has to be that he's doing it willingly. That's what it means. Right? So ani means, okay, even though you're telling me that I have to do this, and even though I originally didn't want to do it, says the Ibn Ezra, it means that he has to do it willingly. It has to be that it's voluntarily given. It doesn't mean that he has to do it out of obligation. It has to be that it's doing it by his own free will. Now, exactly what does that mean? How can a person be forced to do something willfully? Like, I don't understand what that means. These are two very diametrically opposed concepts. If we're going to say that we're just simply behaviorally convincing him or her to do something they were supposed to do, but they don't feel it. So it's mean, how am I possibly going to be able to convince you to do something voluntarily? If we understand the Ibn Ezra to mean that it's that krav of the carbon, the giving of the offering, it has to be b'rtzon v'lo b'oinus, it has to be voluntarily given and not out of obligation. How can it possibly be that a person is forced to give something and then b'rtzon willingly and willfully able and interested in doing that? It's not inherently contradictory. It's obviously inherently a problem for us to understand what that means. So let's understand. There's what we're going to say, this conventional primary understanding of what Rashi is explaining to us. And then we're going to understand something a little bit deeper. And this is the secret of our success, realizing who we are. What is the essence? What is the mahus? What is our soul? What's our neshama? What is our definition, our makeup, our constitution? You know, people, we see the body, what we see in another person is Rishus Harabim, it's the public, but we don't necessarily have access to the inside, the inner, the soul, what makes up that person. And what requires the action that's very, very essential for every person is for one to be in the solitude and the privacy and the singular moments of self-description. Who are you? Are you body or are you soul? It's the raging battle of what the Ramchal writes in Derech Hashem and Mesilas Yesharim, the battle between body and soul, the battle between who you are. Are you the makeup of physicality? Are you the makeup of spirituality? And the dominance of whichever is able to be more dominant based upon what you give emphasis to will be what the people, what the world, what you are able to shine forth. If your essence is soul, the fact that your body, the body is slave to the soul. The body works for the soul, and it's not that the soul works for the body. It's essential. And when we talk about understanding what Rashi means here, this explanation is that what Rashi is teaching us that deep down, every single person wishes to do the right thing. It's impossible, says those who understand the essence of a person, the Mesilas Yesharim, the Derech Hashem, the Bali Musar, and understanding what's essential to describing who we are, when we think about, when we look in the mirror, that every person truly, even though the veneer, even though the blockade, it's very significant, deep down, the Pinta Yid, the soul of a Jewish person, they're on fire. Deep inside, they know they have to do the right thing. They wish to do the right thing. The problem is that it's covered up with a lot of spiritual plaque. At the innermost recesses of every soul, of every person, they have a genuine desire, they have a longing, they want so badly to do the Ratzon Hashem. You might not even realize that you want to do the will of God. You might not even realize how it is that you are to feed your soul. What is it that you have to do? It's like a baby, the child that's learning how to walk. They don't know what to do. One foot, another foot, one before, one after the other. Then a child begins to walk. Then they begin to run. Then a person is on their way. The recess, the soul of every single person has this genuine desire. That is what it means when we understand that every person was given a little piece of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, a little bit of Almighty God himself. And therefore, when he puts soul inside of us, we yearn to be connected to the source. We yearn to be connected to God. The way we connect to God is through the performance of the mitzvos. We feel the greatest amount of achievement, the ultimate amount of success when we're doing what we were created on this world to do. And what we were created on this world to do is to serve a Kadosh Baruch Hu, feeding our soul, shmiras ha-mitzvos, that we fulfill the commandments, not as a sense of obligation, although of course we have obligations to fulfill, but as a sense of calling, a sense of fulfillment of what is the achievement and the definition of who I am. If I do something, I spend my day in an activity that does not really satiate what it is that I need to do to satiate whatever my will is, then I could have spent my entire day very, very busy, and I could have achieved nothing. But at the end of the day, when a person calculates, computes, calibrates what it is that one has to do to be the most successful in life, in order for a person to be successful, you have to know, what are my goals? What are my mechanisms, my tools to be able to achieve that success? But before I can achieve that success, I have to know who I am. I have to understand what my role is. And if I'm body, then I feed my body. But if I'm soul, which I am, then I feed my soul. Our inclination, our Yetzer Hara, is to sin, is external to our true inner selves. The product of the Yetzer Hara in all of its manifestations, that's all external. That's not really who we are. That's not who we want to be. When a person is coerced to fulfill his obligations, here's what we understand. What really happens is that the external pressures are removed so that his true inner desire can be fulfilled. That's what it means. You're telling this person that they have to do it. They have to do it. And what's happening, you're peeling away those deterrents, those distractions, those roadblocks, those spiritual plaque tartar that prevent the person from being themselves. What really happens is the external pressures are removed so that the true inner desire can be fulfilled. It's interesting, actually, if you think about this idea, when we think about the Talmud in Maseches Shabbos, which tells us famously that the mountain was hung over the Jewish people. It was kafalim harkagigis. It was like a tub. And that we were told that if it was, that we will choose properly, it will be good, it'll be mutav. And if not, tehei kfuraschem, if not, it'll be the place for which the burial spot for everybody who was assembled. It seems like coercion. Like, what kind of Kabbalah Torah is that? We need Purim to have a Kabbalah Me'ava, a re-acceptance of the Torah, Kimu v'kiblu. So one second, what does that mean? So with this understanding, it means the coercion doesn't necessarily mean that you're doing something that you don't want to do. It means that maybe what the coercion does, it reveals what it is that you know that you really want to do. It is the entry to achieve the ultimate of what it is that you want to accomplish. You just might not have the words. You might not have the stamina. You might not have the enthusiasm. You might not have the know-how to be who you wish and ultimately want to be. So what really happens is that the external pressures are removed. You need a mountain almost to like be over your head. Oh, let me actually think about this before my demise. Let me think about this before I have the opportunity to make the right or the wrong choice. I'm going to make the right choice. This is not going to be kfuraschem. It's going to be mutav. It's going to be good. But we sometimes need, in the proverbial sense or in the actual sense, those external pressures that hang above us, which need to be removed ultimately for us to be able to reveal the inner essence, the inner desire, what it is that I want. Of course, I don't want a mountain dropped on my head. Not because I don't want a mountain dropped on my head. Nobody wants a mountain dropped on their head, but because the symbolism of the mountain hanging over my head is the symbolism of wake up and understand what your true essence is. If it's worthy of your demise with the drop of this mountain, it must be that you have a calling, you have a sense of something that's else, something that's different. He's not forced against what he wishes, this person in our Parsha, but he's here in this circumstance to eliminate through the coercion, through this conversation, the physical, the emotional blockades that prevent him from fulfilling his true wishes. He doesn't even necessarily know what his true wishes are, but it's possible by this coercive conversation for this person to now be able to reveal, because all of that which prevents him, this is what we understand Rashi's classic understanding, what will ultimately be able to reveal that which has been preventing him from his true wishes, his inner self, his truest self, his neshama, his soul. And this goes very well with understanding. Of course, we know in Bereshis, in the book of Genesis, in chapter 2, Perek Beis, Pasuk Zayin, where the Pasuk tells us, Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam afar min ha'adam, a famous Pasuk, of course, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu forms man from the dust of the earth. Vayipach be'apav nishmas chayim. And you know what happens? HaKadosh Baruch Hu blows into his nostrils, into the person, nishmas chayim. It blows into the man, to the woman, to the person, to the human, the breath of life from his own self. Kavayochel, from the way the soul of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it is vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim. It's blown into him. It is inside every person, elukus, godliness. It is a shtick. It is part of a chelik eluka mimal. Breathe the soul into man. Vayihi ha'adam lenefesh chaya. You know what happens? Then a man became a living being. We're only alive. We're only animated. We're only able. We're only functional because HaKadosh Baruch Hu breathed into my nostrils, into our soul, put into our body this concept of higher being, a higher being which is a piece of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, which is why the soul, the neshama, is eternal. The body is temporary, but the neshama, the soul, is la'olam va'ed, is forever. But it's interesting to think about what this means because it has a very deep resonance in understanding what we're learning as part of this thread, where the Kli Yakar explains that man was created. This verse tells us, Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim, says the Kli Yakar, our creation is really, if you think about it, the struggle against the physical impulses that allow our soul to overcome them. It's not just that we're put here as a finished product. It's not just that we're here, okay, let's get started. Let's do what we're supposed to do. Actually, part of our creation was with struggle. The mere existence of a soul in a person's body is not a guarantee that he will reach the level demanded of him. And that's what the Kli Yakar explains in beautiful language. Ki nishmas chaim hi nefesh hanitzchi. You should know that when it says the living soul, it's eternal, it's intellectual. Yes, but if you think about it, that if you learn, we explained that you understand that this is a bit of divine soul from above. But here's what he explains. Vayikra. Says the Kli Yakar that this pasuk tells us, this verse teaches us that even though HaKadosh Baruch Hu, God breathes an intellectual living soul into man, you should know, Mikol Mokom Vayadam B'Tchilos Aviyosel Stam Nefesh Chaya Ka'asher Ba'alei Chayim. You should know that even though that's true, man was simply another living spirit like all other creatures. Ki Adam ir pera yula v'ikar shluso toloi shtadluso b'vitov b'chirasa. You should know that man was created like and born like a wild animal, like a pera, like a wild pera behem, like a wild animal, and his perfection, his shlemuso, his ultimate shlemus, it depends on something. It's toloi. It's dependent on his shtadlus. What's his shtadlus? On his effort, on his exertion. V'tov b'chiraso. Tov b'chiraso means that he's choosing wisely. He makes good choices in life. You can decide to do something that's mutter, that's permissible. You can decide to do something that's also, that's prohibited. You can decide to keep kosher or to eat treif. You can decide to do mitzvahs or not. You can decide. That is the concept of b'chiras chavshis, free will. And depending on how well a person chooses tov b'chiraso, that depends on whether or not he'll be successful. It all is dependent on how you choose. The way we were born, even though you're going to say, I was given this unbelievable schus, I have a soul that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew inside me, says the Kli Yakar, that isn't necessarily the guarantee only. That soul that is given to you with all the potential to achieve, that the shlemus, that is the definition of our completeness, is dependent on the shtadlus and tov b'chirasa, on how it is we choose, how it is that the choices that we make will mature with our age. And so therefore, aval, b'tchilas, aviyasa, even though this is true, we have to understand that at the very beginning, from the very beginning of our existence, Afalpi, even though shekfar noipach by nishmas urachayim, says the Rachayim, even though a living soul is already placed inside this person, mikol mokum ein hanishama bo befoal. This is so important, these words. You should know that the neshama was not bepoil yet. The soul is not actualized yet. What is it? Kim bekoyach levad. Bekoyach levad means that the neshama is merely potential within him. It is a seed that needs to be watered, that will bud, that will flower, that will grow, that will inspire, that will animate. If it's not that a person uses this the way it's supposed to, understanding that it's merely potential, if he does not gird himself with the diligence to wage God's war against the sitra achar, against the tzahara, you know it's going to be? It's going to be that he's going to remain in this status his whole life. How can it be that a person who's so holy can do such unholy things? Do they not have a soul? Were they not blown into their nostrils from Elokei Mima'al, from God from on high? The answer is they were. But the difference is that there's something that requires us. Mikol Mokum Ein Hanishama Bo Befoa. That means that the soul does not ignite on its own. It requires effort. It requires Poal. Poal means that it needs you to get it going, to work it. You have to exercise it. You have to actualize it. It's potential that's within a person. Harehu nishar, if it does not get that activity, it's not watered, if it's not nurtured, if it's not nourished, if it's not fed, so then harehu nishar, then it remains, and he remains in the status of behema, like an animal, v'nimshal ka behema aval, shor, a kesev, a eiz, ki yulad, ba'osa yom nivra, Im kol shlimus of ein bo to sefesh shlemos. You understand, like an animal, they're born whole as they are. There is no tosefes shalemos. There is no additional growth. There is no wholesomeness. There is no achieving perfection with such animals. They are where they are. There is no growth. And so the symbolism of us remaining in the status of bahami, of behema, of animal, represents us not nourishing and nurturing the greatest gift given to us, the ultimate of who we are, which is the neshama, which is the soul. Mikol makom ein haneshama bo bepoal. It just sits in a person, requires us to engage it. And so the Gila Lona Kosev, what we understand here is the Torah reveals this to us. Why? It tells us this, that a person should not make a mistake. He should not say in his heart, saying, it should not be that a person should say to himself, that's why the Torah reveals this as the Kli Yakar. He shouldn't say that because, I was born with a soul, I was born complete. And so therefore, what's going to happen, you're going to live a life that's going to achieve perfection without effort. Don't say that. It's never that a situation that is a person is born complete. It is not so. It is ki eina davar kain. Everything depends on a person's actions. The greatest secret is how much effort, how much action. Lefum tsara agra always has the ability to exchange intellect for nature or nature for intellect. And this is why we understand this is what is in your hands. The Torah does not say about the creation of man, God saw it was good. Because when why? Because when man was created, it was not yet apparent in what way he was good. It doesn't say ki tov. It is for us to say ki tov. It is for us to be mashlim, for us to complete that, understanding it wasn't clear. Yet, what is the purpose and what is it that we realize that we're supposed to live with wasn't yet apparent why it was good and what is it that is good. And this is what the Ramchal writes in Derech Hashem, that we have to understand the raging battle, the highest wisdom that is decreed that man should consider of two opposites. There are two things that battle. These are the pure spiritual soul and his unenlightened physical body. His physical body doesn't know. His physical body wants to eat food. His physical body wants to sleep, wants to procreate. Each one is drawn towards its nature, its teva, so that the body inclines towards material, the soul leans towards spiritual. And the function really is that the two are at a constant battle with each other. They're constantly raging with each other. And the battle that we have to figure out how to win is who it is that we feed and dominate more. Obviously, you have to eat food and drink and sleep and do all the things that are physical. But that's not the ikr. That's not the main. That's not the essential. That is secondary. That's tuffle. If the soul prevails, if the soul is v'nimtza, if it turns out, if it's tiskaber and neshama, if it's true that the soul prevails, it not only elevates itself, but it actually elevates the body as well, right? Because then the body becomes the servant of the soul. And the individual thereby attains his destined perfection, because the whole purpose of our creation is to be close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu through fulfilling the mitzvos as best and as inspired as we possibly can. So whoever is going to be slave to which is going to be the definition of our greatest achievements in life. If the body is the slave to the soul, then the body is going to just do what the soul wants. Come on, body, get up early. Kum lavod sabar. You got to go to daven with a minyan. You got to learn Torah. You got to do mitzvos. You got to be kind. You got to be generous. You got to do things that are the way your soul will feel nourished. Now, however, Rahman al-San, if a person allows his body to prevail, then besides lowering his body, we know of so many people around this world. What they do is they lower their body. They do things to their body. They do things with their bodies. They only feed their bodies. So you know what happens? Not only does he lower the status of their body, but they also debase their soul. Such an individual makes himself unworthy of perfection. He's not able to be a repository of that. And he divorces himself from God, even though that's not something that can ever be terminally true. Unless a person does egregious activity, he still has the ability to subjugate the physical to his soul and intellect and thereby achieve perfection. And therefore, that's what we understand, that the purpose, the tafkid of the dual nature of Adam, of man, is to place him in a position of struggle. Struggle is what's given to us to be able to achieve the greatest success. Nobody likes the struggle. Nobody wants to eat maror. Nobody wants to have hard, difficult things that are presented to them, and nobody should have those difficulties that are yoser midai. But to the extent that a person experiences a temptation, to the extent that a person has what is a thrust, a pull to feed something that is not, that is opposite your soul, so then it is an opportunity for a person to persevere. It is to be able to actually realize that there's something, as Rashi is understood to mean, that is actually something that you really truly want, but you don't necessarily even know because it's so covered up. And so that ultimately will bring a person to eternal reward, a life that is lived with extraordinary achievement, with unbelievable meaning in your life. Because at the end of the day, if you're living life as it's supposed to be lived, if you're doing what is your essence, so then it's a life that's filled with simcha, it's filled with joy, it's filled with accomplishment, it's filled with achievement, it's filled with really feeling shalom v'shalva, a sense of serenity, a sense of doing what you're supposed to be doing, eternal reward that's associated with it. That's the struggle, and that's the dual nature that's there. And that's how to understand Raitzani. What does it mean, Raitzani? Raitzani means that really, deep down, I really want that. Deep down, I really should want that. Really deep down, if I think about it, I am a neshama, I am a soul, and I am on fire. And I've covered it up with layers and layers and layers and layers of so many different things. Those layers which can be peeled away one by one, slowly, one foot in front of the next, taking baby steps ultimately to walk and then to run, and then you're on the path of life, doing and achieving as you best would want to do. This is understanding Rashi in the conventional sense, and B'derech Drush to understand it in a little bit of a larger totality type of way. But this is one idea. But I want to share with you one final thought, which is in the writings of Rav Moshe Sofer of Pressburg, 18th century, of course, we know is the Chasam Sofer, who wrote on Chumash and various other places, understanding in the lexicon of our Torah learning, suggests a very different explanation of Rashi's understanding. And with this, we can maybe even understand when it is that we find it too difficult for one to just dig deep, to really take the shovel and to go deep beneath the surface and to uncover and to unlock. You know, you're at the beach and you're digging, you take the sand and you remove the sand and you're making a pit, you're making a hole, you're out there with your kids. And all of a sudden what happens is you reveal that there's water. There's something that's beneath the surface. There's the hot, scalding burn of the sand on a hot summer day. You can't even put your feet. And when you dig and you make this crater, then you see there's something beneath it. There's the soul, there's the water, there's the life spring. The Mayim is Doma Torah. That is a tremendous metaphor in life. When you dig, you find, you search, something you didn't even know that was there. But here's what we can also understand, says the Chasam Sofer, a beautiful little mashal. He says, you can imagine you have a farmer, and this farmer commits an aveira. He lives in a far off place. And the reality is, because he lives in a far off place, he's got to travel now that he does an Aveira. He's got to bring a carbon. But it's very difficult for this person to do this. He doesn't feel that. You know, if a person felt, I did an Aveira, I got to go to Yerushalayim, I got to go to Jerusalem, I got to bring a carbon, I got to remedy this. This guy says the Chasam Sofer is very reluctant. He's very hesitant to go. Why? He's got a large enterprise. He's got a big business that he's got to be busy with. He's got a family he's got to tend to. He's got communal obligations. He's not happy to take off time. He doesn't want to go. Again, that we're not talking about he gets on a metro liner. He doesn't get onto a light rail. He doesn't get onto an airplane, get into his car. He'd have to journey, says the Chasam Sofer. Imagine a guy's to journey from his home, and he's got to go to Beis HaMikdash. He's got to go to Yerushalayim. He's got to invest. He's got to purchase an expensive behemoth animal, and he's got to sacrifice this. Imagine this. He's guilty. He doesn't feel good about the fact that he does an Aveira, but he doesn't really want to go, right? You feel bad about it, but how long do you feel bad about it? There's somebody who confessed to me not too long. He feels really bad about the Aveiras, but then he goes to sleep and he wakes up the next morning and then it's gone. So a person has to live with remedying, making better themselves in any and every way possible. So plagued by this guilt, says the Chasam Sofer, he's ambivalent, and yet nonetheless he purchases an animal, he prepares for his trip. And now what happens? He goes on his way. They hear what he's doing, the people in his town, and they mock him. And they say, what are you doing? Are you serious? You're going to Yerushalayim? Come on, cut me a break. You expect that you're going to be a better person. You made a mistake. What's the big deal? The soul, the neshama. Cut me a break. And the people are jeering against him. This is a very important point because the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos tells us a person has to be very discerning, very scrupulous to find who it is that they spend their lives around? Who do you live next to? Who are your neighbors? Who are your neighbors actually on your block? Who are your neighbors that you sit next to in shul? Who are the neighbors that you share a coffee with? Who are the people that are your surroundings? Who are the people around you? That's a very big deal. Because if the people around you, if they see that you get up for minyan, like, what are you doing getting up for minyan? What are you doing being so religious? Are those tzitzis hanging out of your shirt? Are they sticking out of your pants? Are you serious, tzitzis? Oh, come on. You're so religious. Those payas around your ears. You're wearing a kippah on your head. You're covering your hair. You're keeping Shabbos. Are you serious? There's a 3-day Yontif coming. There's a Shabbos, 2 days of Pesach. 3 days you're going to be without your phone. 3 days you're not going to know the news. 3 days you're not going to post something on Instagram, on Facebook. Are you serious? What kind of crazy planet do you live on? No way, no chance. This guy's getting a Misha Berach from everybody walking past. He's walking past. They're all telling him it's totally nuts. And they're telling him, what in the world is it that you're doing? And what's problematic is sometimes, you see, because we're in this raging battle, because as the Ramchal tells us, because as the Kli Yakar tells us, we have this raging battle. So you know what happens? We're not easily able to overcome that skepticism. We're not easily able to tell ourselves, no, we're doing the right thing. This is what I should be doing. The second you feel that the people around you are looking at you with certain eyes of skepticism, you know what happens? You share some of that feeling. You feel no desire to go to make this trip. But okay, I started the process. Maybe it's good enough. I know that I should do it, and I'm able to take that first step. You see, so many people aren't even able really to take that first step. They know they should take the first step. Some people don't even know that they should take the first step. But even if you know you should take the first step, even a person who knows they should take the first step and they should do the right thing, they can't get their first foot in front of another foot. They can't take that plunge. They can't make that first effort. They can't do it. But in this case, says the Chasam Sofer, this guy, it's a mashal, it's a parable to a fellow, such a person, he's being jeered at, and nonetheless, he knows that he should do it, even though he shares in his heart some of what he's hearing from them, and they are saying that he shouldn't do it. This is what it is. But he understands that he's got to do it anyway. He does it anyway. And so therefore, because he wants to go and to do it anyway, he's less than willing and less than interested in do it, but he does it. He's going to do it anyway. He's going to do it no matter what. Such a person. So here's what happens. Eventually, this guy, he gets to Eretz Yisrael. He gets to Yerushalayim, rather. He's living in Eretz Yisrael, in this case. And he gets to Jerusalem. And he gets to the Ir Atikah, I guess the old city. And he gets to the Beis HaMikdash. And he's walking with his animal. Imagine the scene. You know, we've been to Israel before. If you haven't, you can just imagine the scene. And now he's in the holy city. You know, when you are in the holy city of Yerushalayim, and then when you go into the Ir Atikah, and then when you walk to the Kotel HaMa'aravi, imagine the Beis HaMikdash is standing. Imagine you see the to, the fro, the coming, the going, the ruchnis, the spirituality. You can see almost the letters on the siddur. They're in the air. They are literally gathered with the Jewish people in the heart and the soul, praying together in this holy site. So this fellow, everything changes for him. He looks up. He sees the Kohanim. He sees that they're wearing the big day kahuna. They're wearing their garments. He sees that they're tending to the karbonos, to the sacrifices. He sees the other rituals. He hears the music of the Leviim, the sounds, the songs. He sees the Rabbanim of the Sanhedrin. They're listening and deliberating cases of Jewish law, the greatest sages of all time. They're discussing difficult halachic issues. And the sight of the Beis HaMikdash and the activity, it fills him with a tremendous amount of awe. He doesn't know what to do with himself. He literally, now is thrusted back. By now, he's no longer reluctant. He didn't know if he should make this trip, but now that he's made this trip, he's now overwhelmed by what he sees. He's overjoyed that he came to this holy place. Now he gives the carbon, sacrifice, says to the Kohen, sacrifice this on my behalf. He decides now, not only is he happy to be there, not only does he give this sacrifice to the Kohen willingly, but you know what happens? He was supposed to go back on Tuesday. He says, you know what, I'm going to call my travel agent. And you know what? I'm going back a week from Tuesday. I'm going to extend my trip. I need to stay here. This special Kedusha of Yerushalayim, Beis HaMikdash, I need to be here. I can't tell you how much that idea resonates with me personally, how many times I've been to Yerushalayim, and I know that I have to leave on a certain date at a certain time. And almost every single time I'm looking at my calendar, I'm looking at my schedule. Like, can I just stay another day, another 2 days? Can I just stay through Shabbos? All right, or maybe I'll stay through Monday and it's already Tuesday. If already it's at Wednesday, let me just stay for the next Shabbos. I want to stay as long as I can. So you can understand. He feels that energy. He feels that Kedusha. He's not just there for the falafel and the hummus and the pita and the schug. He's there because he feels the royalty, he feels the kedusha, he feels the magic, and he feels the majesty, he feels the holiness. And this is how a person can be coerced to bring a sacrifice willingly. It's not just that it's true that this person might bring something that deep inside he knows that he should do. But you know what happens? When you coerce this person, he arrives there, he then does it willingly and joyously. Even though in the first understanding, he doesn't necessarily know what the right thing is, he'll understand that maybe eventually, but you bring that person to that place. You bring that person to that atmosphere that is the one that's a spiritual atmosphere, everything's going to change. And this is the inside of the Chasam Sofer. He's explaining to us, this is a critically important idea of placing yourself, all of us, in an atmosphere of positive energy. If you're in an energy where there are people around you that are doing things that are going to elevate you, then you feel more elevated around them. And if they're not elevated around you, you have to find the strength to be the one who's elevating others to elevate themselves. As long as this farmer was in his hometown, in this mashal of the Chasam Sofer, right? Or he was on the road, he's on the way to Yerushalayim, he wasn't so into it. He wasn't so excited. But once he gets there, everything changes. Suddenly he now wants to stay. He wants to be connected to it. He gravitates toward it. It's not just a question anymore. He's encouraged, the aura, the kedusha, the holiness. Now he wants to live his life in a different way. So what happens is that the environment, it's what unlocks the ability for a person to be able to be themselves. So it's not just the idea of what lied deep beneath the surface, is that what the secret is you got to put yourself in a place, in a community, around people, doing activities that will ultimately wake ourselves up to be those people who, when it seems to be that that mountain is hanging over us in life, we're able to say, oh, no. It's not just I have to do it because I really know I should do it. Is that when I'm experiencing it, when I taste and I smell and I sense and I experience Shabbos, I experience Pesach, I experience mitzvos, I understand it at a different level. You know what happens? I don't do it out of just religious obligation. I do it because I want it and I yearn it. You know why I yearn it? Because it's connecting me to me. It's now a definition of who I am. It's critical that for every Jew to ensure this at all times, you're in the right crowd, you're in the right community, the right neighborhood, you're in the right surroundings, right? It's very powerful if a person's not. And certainly, Allah has come of a come when a person is. The force that is this influence on a person and a person's behavior, it behooves us always to be sure to it, that this positive energy, the repository for which we're able to then have the tools, the strength, the secret that is able to help us be successful in the battle, body versus soul, it behooves us to understand that we have to do everything possible to make ourselves in an environment of people, of community, of place that facilitates our growth, that allows us to remain faithful to our tradition, to the study of Torah, the Shmiras HaMitzvot, the observance of the commandments. We place ourselves in such a place where we're going to be inspired to do the right thing when sometimes we don't feel that. It's very difficult for a person to feel that every single day. But if you live in a community where people are asking about you, are celebrating your achievements in spirituality, then you feel more inclined to be more spiritual. Hold yourself responsible. Be a person that holds other people responsible as well, not in a pejoratory, not in a condescending chas v'shalom way, but in an inviting, a loving, oh, you did this and you did that. And look how special it is that you say this and you feel that. Then you become committed to God and His Torah, eager to fulfill His mitzvahs. Then we understand everything about what it is to reveal the essence of who I am. And so this is the very powerful lesson of understanding the voice. As Rashi tells at the very beginning, that everybody doesn't necessarily, while they have the opportunity to hear it because the voice is there, reverberates, lo shomin means that they don't necessarily allow themselves to hear it. They don't allow themselves to reveal the essence of who they are. And that's what it is. Yakriv also l'ritzono, this duality, that it's roitza ani, that this fellow is going to say it, which we understand that he has to do it voluntarily and not out of obligation. And even though these are contradictory terms, the way we understand Rashi is that deep down a person really wants to do in the recess of their soul, they want to experience a genuine desire to fulfill that closeness. It's the Yetzer Hara, it's the manifestations of the Yetzer Hara's will to bring us far. That what really happens is that he's not being coerced to fulfill obligations. What's happening is that he is now revealing himself. He's eliminating the physical, emotional blockades that have prevented him from fulfilling his true wishes. Vayitzer Hashem Elokim es ha'adam offer min ha'adam v'yipach ba'apav nishmas chayim ha'adam l'nefesh chaya. Says the Kli Yakar, as we understand, just because you have a soul does not mean that that soul automatically, you have to light it up. You have to be befal. You have to get it going. You have to work it. You have to understand that you have a role. It's all dependent on achieving shleimus. Is all about this fulfillment of wholesomeness. It's hishtadlus v'tov b'chiraso. It's how much effort and how much good choice you choose to do. That is your secret. That is, as the Derech Hashem says in the Ramchal's writing of the path and the way of God, there are two ideas that are consistently at battle with each other, the body and the soul. Which will prevail? Your soul prevails, you've elevated your body along with your soul. If your body prevails, you've lessened, debased your body, and of course your soul. It's never too late. The dual nature of this is that even though you fall into the abyss, you always have the ability. Says the Derech Hashem, the Ramchal, you always have the ability to subjugate the physical to your soul and intellect and achieve the shleimus. And finally, says the Chasam Sofer, it's all about the environment, the place you put yourself. Make sure that you either are in our place or you are providing the spiritual needs for that place so that the people around you can be inspired by you to be sure to it. That the things you talk about, the places that you go, the things that you look at, the ways of which you come and go in all areas of your life are able to be around and with people and in an environment that is what inspires you to be the best of yourself, to reveal who you really are, the essence, which is the essence of the soul, so that all of us are saying loudly, triumphantly, that we hear the voice. And yes, Yakriv Oso L'Ritzono, it will mean that we'll all be able to say that this is Ad Sheyemer Reitza Ani, until I'm able to say that I want it, because I want it, I want nothing more. I want nothing more. There's nothing that I could achieve greater than my ultimate deliverance, the delivery of my soul, the understanding of how to live life as it's best and meant to be lived. Ken Yehi Ratzon V'nomar Amen. Thank you all so much for listening this morning. Thank you so much to the Kleins, our generous sponsors, for this Torah class. It should be a zchus for the neshama, for your father, and it should be a merit for your entire family. I thank everybody who've tuned in to our learning together via the portals that have been made possible through social media, YouTube, and various others. Thank you so much. I wish everybody a wonderful Thursday, a good Shabbos, and then Mitzvah Hashem, we look forward to learning together again very soon. Have a blessed day.